back in the days, these guys would spend months or years on a ship, and then they would get hurt.
Right, and it's so fundamental,
and the captain would just kick them off in the next port.
So what we're talking about a body of law that's hundreds of years old. And maintenance secure is so simple. You got to get me home. You can't leave me in India. You got to get me medical care. And you got to pay for me to have a place to stay, right? It's so fundamental to like, it's a human natural right. Like, you work on a vessel. It's so fundamental to who we are as seamen, as, you know, guys are on the boat that are out there working. Welcome to Above the Legal Limit. I'm your host, Justin Chopin, business owner, lawyer, dad, world's best husband, traveler, and adventure seeker. On this podcast, we mix business with pleasure. We'll dive into growth strategies, entrepreneurial adventures, the business of law, and prove that business isn't boring. So let's get ready, because we are going above the legal limit. Welcome to another episode of Above the Legal Limit. I'm your host, Justin Chopin. For those of you joining us, we're doing something different today. We're doing something different on a lot of fronts. Typically, if you've watched this show, you know that it's an ask me anything kind of show. Like, I have no filter. I will literally say anything. And then you also know that I get to drink scotch. That's the game. Today, we're not going to drink scotch. We're going to drink bourbon. Not everybody likes scotch. Also, we have a guest here today. So we've never really done this with a guest. So this is a first for us. So if you like it, let us know. Drop it in the comments. If you like the show, subscribe, and you can keep watching. So today is Above the Legal Limit, and we're going to get to the law in a minute. But for now, let me introduce my guest, Jacques DeGru, who is one of our esteemed maritime attorneys at the Chopin Law Firm.
Hey, Justin. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Glad you're here. So the reason I asked Jacques to come on the show today is because we are going to talk about maritime law, which is really our bread and butter. So all of the lawyers here, we were born and raised learning maritime law. And even though we represent a wide host of different, injured clients, we always love our maritime clients. But before we get to all that, what are we drinking? Because you won't drink my scotch. What do we have here?
We have a Willett Rye.
All right, so we got, this is, for the less fancy people, we call this green top Willett, right? You got purple top Willett, green top Willett, and then fancy bottle Willett. I call it green top. So I haven't had this in a long time. I think Willett is, I've had the fancy Willett, but I've never had purple top Willett because it's hard to get. I know that I've had green top, but so green top is just rye. It's 113 proof, 13.8. Oh, hello. You want me to pour for you?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll pour for you.
Appreciate that.
There are no short pours in this law firm. So typically what I like to do is we'll talk about scotch, and I'll be like, I'm not pretentious about scotch. And then I kind of act a little pretentious about the scotch. But today, we'll just drink the whiskey because I'm not pretentious about whiskey. Especially about rye. Rye's okay. To me, a rye is really something that you make a Sazerac out of, or an old fashioned. So to have like a sipping rye is just not in my vernacular.
I like the occasional rye in an old fashioned.
Yeah, right. But
it gives it a little rougher edge, I feel like.
So when I was growing up, we drank old fashions with Old Overhaul, which you could still buy, and it's really cheap.
Never heard of it.
You've never heard of Old Overhaul? So it's like...
Oh, Overholt.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's like a $15 rye,
But it's really good.
It is really good. It is a really good rye. And, you're right, it's not sweet. And so the problem is, if you want to make an old-fashioned with like Angel's Envy, right? Love Angel's Envy, but you end up getting a really sweet cocktail, where the rye might give a little edge to it.
Yep.
So
I had a phase about 10 years ago. I really liked the cheap but good drugstore bourbons.
Okay.
Like the Old Forester 12 years, and they even had
Old
a
Forester's
24
fancy
year
now.
at one point. Yeah, they all became fancy at some point.
Yeah,
The
Old
bourbon
Forester,
boom
they there's this thing in wine where they find people buy wine by the wine label, right? So the whole industry is about not necessarily what's in the bottle, but what the bottle looks like. And we're all susceptible to it. So don't think that you're not. Like, you're buying the shit based on what you're seeing. And I feel like Old Forester really captured that with their new labels. So they're very much like, old world, this is, we're your grandpa's whiskey, right? With that look to it.
Yeah, well, it's the only way to pick a bottle is by the label unless you know specifically which one you want.
That's true. I mean, if you
There's no descriptions really. And,
right, especially online, and there's no descriptions here. So what I love about Scotch is you get a Scotch, and they'll give you, like a full page of everything about it. They're like hints of cream and peach, But whiskey doesn't do that, right? Whiskey is like, this is very American. They're like, listen, we assume you know what this is because you bought it. Drink it. And that's the American way. So I like this. I would like
Whiskey.
it better if it were Scotch.
Okay.
So,
I'd like it less if
to
it
the
was
makers
Scotch.
of Willet, constructive criticism.
I love the idea of Scotch.
Well, it's not for everybody, but
Yeah.
if you try hard enough, it can be.
Sitting in alligator chairs.
Yeah, Scotch in an alligator chair.
Smoke a pipe.
You
drink
know,
Scotch,
you can
have
smoke a
a fireplace
pipe.
going.
Maybe loosen up. Maybe it's the end of the day.
I started loose
I'm not trying any cases today. So let's talk about the laws. We've talked about the whiskey. I asked Jacques to come because he is one of our most senior and seasoned maritime attorneys. He just started at the firm after a very distinguished defense lawyer career. And so welcome to the law firm.
Thank you.
Welcome
It's
to the
been
show.
It's been a long time coming. So like I said, I've done maritime defense law for 20 years, and I frankly just got tired of being on the defense side. I'd rather help people.
There's no reward. I've said this before. It's like a soundbite, but there's no reward in defending an insurance company. You'll get paid to do it, but you'll never go home feeling like you really did something today, right?
And I met great people, and I
Yes.
reported to great people, and they were all very nice, and I liked them all. But you're right, there was no reward to it.
I love that clients will come to us with a problem and not know what to do, and that we can help them navigate through that problem and then give them a good result. And it sounds manufactured, it sounds like made up, but it's not. I like to think of it as like, your country doctor. You go see your country doctor, you're like, I got this problem. And the doctor is like, well, I've studied, this issue extensively, and I can help you, and just, take this or do that, and really be able to give them a result and improve their life in one way or another. And I find, even though we are a business and we're, now getting to be that mid-sized firm where we're getting bigger, I still love being able to help an individual client when they come in the door.
Yeah, that is real. And I noticed very quickly that in talking to the clients, one, most of them were absolutely thrilled that their lawyers here call them back. That's a huge problem out there, though.
It is.
They don't know what to do. They have an issue, and you're the person that can help them. And they're incredibly grateful for that, and it's nice to do it for them and help them navigate things.
So part of our firm, part of the ethos of our firm, part of what we value, our core values, is, and I came up with this when it was like me, in my home office alone, but we've carried it through, and I'm very proud of it, is that, if the president of the bank calls his lawyer, the lawyer takes the call, right? So if a senior adjuster is calling their defense lawyer, you're taking that call. You don't tell your paralegal, like, tell him I'm in trial today, right?
Yep.
Individual plaintiffs deserve the same compassion and respect. They are paying for your services.
Yeah.
So I very firmly believe this. If you hire a lawyer, you should be getting the same services that they're getting, because they're getting great service.
Yep.
So I do think you're right. I mean, just returning that call, I think is, it shows the client. It's like, we're not a commercial. It's not an act. This is real. You have a real problem. You have a client right now whose legs were crushed. This is life-altering damages. Just the act of calling him back and letting him know, like, yes, I'm here. Yes, I'm working on your case. Yes, I know what's going on with you, and I'm working to a resolution, I think gives people a sense of calm, a sense of like, okay, I don't need to worry about this. Jacques got it.
Yeah.
I can focus on something else. So here's the real thing. So here's what we're going to talk about today.
Right. I'm in the hot seat. Let's
yeah,
go.
you're in the hot seat. This is the question that was posed, and it's a bit obvious, but it may not be. Why is it important to work with an attorney experienced in maritime law? So when they asked me that question earlier, I said, let's get Jacques in here, because I think he'll be able to give a nuanced answer here. Why is it important to work with a lawyer who's experienced in maritime law, as opposed to just somebody who's doing car accidents, around the clock?
So yeah, it's important mainly because it is a very specific and peculiar area of the law. Now look, I've done it for a long time. It often seems very simple and straightforward to me. And a great example of that is 5 or 6 years ago, a new associate came to me in a prior firm and did not have much maritime experience. And I said, look, maritime law is not real hard. I can give you the 5-minute synopsis of it. And I started talking, and 2 hours later,
Right.
that associate said, I thought you said it was easy. I said, well, maybe it's not. But the biggest thing is it's different from other areas in that, especially car accidents or slip or trip and falls, things like that, where your lawyer, will arrange some medical treatment. You'll go to a doctor. We'll notify the other company. At some point during that treatment, a demand might be made, or somebody might deny liability. Maybe a suit gets filed. In maritime law, especially if you are suing an employer, you get very specific remedies, and you want that employer to be on a very fast notice. You want to make certain demands. If you are a Jones Act seaman, for example, that's anybody who is working on a vessel, they're assigned to that vessel permanently, and they're a member of the crew.
In navigable waters.
In navigable waters. And so
we all did maritime law. We
Yep.
can do this all day.
Those Jones Act seamen are entitled to maintenance and cure when they get hurt, and that's a daily stipend, which is usually $50 to $75 a day, depending on where you are and what their expenses are. And they're also entitled to have all their medical expenses paid by their employer. And when we make those demands, you want to make them early on. You want the employer to be on notice. You don't want to give them any basis to come back later and try to deny that demand for maintenance and cure. And that's important because it gets the client some money.
Yeah.
And it may not
At a
be
time
enough
when
to
they really
cover
need
their
it.
full expenses.
Yeah.
Correct. But it gets them involved. We get the medical treatment going. And the most important thing is to put every party on notice, because a lot of times you'll have third parties that are liable under the general maritime law as opposed to specifically the Jones Act.
So I love this area of the law, and I could nerd out on it all day long. And maybe we'll do another podcast
I could go
about
on
it.
forever.
Right. So, but what's fun about it is that maintenance and cure is one of the oldest remedies under the law, and it is not have anything to do with American law, right? I mean, it goes back to the old days of shipping. These shipping giants from England, around the Horn of Africa, over to India, getting spices in the spice trade, and probably even before that,
Right. Back in the days, these guys would spend months or years on a ship, and then they would get hurt.
Right. And it's so fundamental,
and a captain
right?
would just kick them off in the next port.
So what we're talking about a body of law that's hundreds of years old. And maintenance and cure is so simple. You got to get me home. You can't leave me in India. You got to get me medical care, and you got to pay for me to have a place to stay. Right? It's so fundamental to like it's a human natural right. Like you work on a vessel, it's so fundamental to who we are as seamen. As guys are on the boat that are out there working.
Yep.
I love it. I love that.
The courts are incredibly protective of seamen. They are wards of the court. It's been for hundreds of years now. Briefs have started off with, "My client is a ward of this court." And it's because nobody looked out for him for hundreds of years.
So the question, how do you know you're not talking to a maritime attorney? And I do this because I handle the sales aspect. I handle the intake. I talk to the clients as they're coming in. You can always spot, because a lot of times our clients that are injured offshore, they're a little bit more savvy, right? And these guys, they're making a ton of money working offshore, that they know if you know about maritime law, because you talk the talk.
I was
you
gonna
know
say.
the words.
Yep, they absolutely, they can tell you if you know the terminology. And in addition to that, at least on a local level, the companies involved. For example, we had a fella call, and he told me he was injured on an offshore platform, and he told me where it was, and I immediately responded with, "Oh, is that?" And I named the company. He said, "Oh, you know that." And I said, yes, I know that company. I'm familiar with them. I've never represented them, but I'd had cases with them.
That's how you really know you've got somebody, when you talk. So the Gulf of Mexico, they have blocks, right? And so if you actually know the block, and I don't. Like I won't lie. Like I get guys like Jacques here so that they do, right? So that's the mark of a business owner, is hiring people who know things better than you do. So Jacques knows the blocks, and so that's it. But you have to. I mean, once upon a time, maybe I did, but it's been years now. But you have to know the companies, and in a lot of ways, the maritime community here on the legal side is still the good old boys.
It's a small community.
It is.
Everybody gets
knows each
along very well. I will say that on both sides of the V, as they say. There's a lot of mutual respect. Everybody's done it for a while. And I find the cases sometimes, cases can get contentious, but there's still a good bit of the old days where people can argue and almost hate each other during a hearing and then go have a cocktail after and still try to work towards resolving the case. And, that's what, especially on this side, all I want to do is get my client the best result possible.
Right. Get them medical treatment, get them their wages.
Yes.
Get them back on their feet and get them back to work. I want you to go back to work.
Right.
I want you to have, some of the most rewarding cases I've ever had were clients that came to me that were like, Justin, I don't want to be this way. I used to be this person, I used to be the caretaker for my family, and my kids used to look up to me, and now I'm laying in bed, and it's been, now it's been a really long time. I want you to have what you want.
Right. Everybody should be entitled to and have available whatever medical treatment they need to live a pain-free life, or as close to pain-free as possible, right? I mean, the reality is some injuries are going to alter someone's life forever.
Yeah,
and that's
true.
that. But
that's
one of the interesting things about maritime law, though, and it's different. If you're that Jones Act seaman, you're not limited to workers' compensation. Your employer, if you become disabled, they're going to owe you your wages that you would have earned for the rest of your work life. And there's no streamlined compensation system. You'll have to prove some negligence. But in my experience out, especially in the Gulf of Mexico and on the Mississippi River, there's a lot of room for negligence out there.
Yeah. Otherwise, we'd be out of a job.
Yes.
And we're not out of a job.
No.
You guys keep getting hurt. That's all right.
We're here when that happens.
So anytime someone says, like plaintiffs' lawyers are vultures, I love this because maritime law is the best example that you can use of why we're not. Because it used to be, 30, 40 years ago, people were getting injured offshore constantly, catastrophic injuries. And now, we're like there used to be this billboard. I know the attorney, a great friend, he's like, I'm not a shark, but I know how to deal with them. We're sharks. You know what sharks do? Sharks swim in the ocean and they will feed on injured and slow fish. We are sharks, and what we do is we police the waters and make them safer for mariners, right? I mean, so it is not as dangerous today working offshore as it was 30 years ago.
It is not.
And there's a reason for that, and there's actually one reason. It's not from anyone's goodwill, right? It's not because the owners of Exxon are like, well, I don't really want people to get hurt. No, it's because they've been sued so many times that someone finally said, oh, for crying out loud, okay, what do we have to do? Well, let's put a safety team together and let's figure out what happened. And then let's isolate what it was that wasn't safe, and then let's never do it again. How simple is that, right? And we're like,
it's
holy
not that hard.
shit. So you guys, all you had to do was sit there and be like, now, why did you get hurt? Well, he fell down the stairs. Okay. What would we have to do so that he didn't fall down the stairs again? I imagine, I could see it. We're like, you could put treads on the stairs. All right, treads on the stairs. I like it. Keep the ideas going. Don't have oil on the stairs. All right, I like that too. I like where you're headed. This is not rocket science.
Make a rule that you're not allowed to carry 200 pounds of equipment down the stairs by yourself.
That's a common one. So I get that a lot. A lot of clients will call and they'll be like, I got hurt. And how'd you get hurt? And like, I asked for help. I told my boss, I told the foreman, or told whoever, hey, that's too heavy for me to carry. And they got told, We don't really care, just carry it.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Do
If
it
someone
anyway.
came to me and said, Justin, you got to carry this 200, there'd be absolutely no way. I would be incapacitated. And I'm not tough like the guys working offshore. It's like once I'm out, like I'm just out. Like there is no coming back. There's no physical therapy available to me that's going to fix that problem. So
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned that they all have stop work authority now, and everyone, whether you're a Jones Act seaman, an offshore platform worker, a passenger on someone else's vessel riding out to your vessel, you can call stop work at any time. People still do not know that. Some companies, everybody says, hey, you can do this at any time, and they all train their people on stop work authority. But we all know that when it actually comes time to exercise that, some companies will frown upon it. They'll
I was going to ask you, is that it is frowned upon? I mean,
it's usually not, but it's I think
it's the culture.
It's more of a, hey, everybody can call stop work at any time. That's your right. Is something for the companies and their insurers, attorneys to say in a courtroom or in a deposition or in a setting like that. The reality is that time is still money, especially offshore. The vessels are getting paid huge amounts per day, and sometimes they just need to get work done. And there's always and there's always a little bit of a gray area there, but it is some companies encourage you to stop work, some don't.
Yeah.
And some will actively discourage you from exercising that. You mentioned a gentleman earlier, he had exercised stop work authority that day.
Did he really?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know that.
They were working in high seas, and the seas did not relent, and yet they were still set.
Well, you can issue a stop. You could say stop work at work, but you can't tell unless you can't be like Jesus and like calm the seas, right? The seas are what they are.
The seas are what they are. Mother Nature's always going to win for the most part. I think we know that a little too well with hurricanes here.
Right. Here I'm getting this in the background, so they're telling us that we've rambled on too long.
Oh.
But thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it. Thanks for making me not drink scotch, because actually,
This is good stuff.
It's pretty good. So here's the deal. So I didn't buy this. We pilfered this. One of our paralegals is, this isn't mine. I said it was in there. I'll go apologize. We pilfered this from an employee. You can't bring a bottle of Willet to a law firm and expect people not to drink it. What are you, crazy?
It's like the bin of airline bottles.
Somebody had their leftovers eaten out of the fridge the other day. You think you could just put this in a pantry and not have someone take it? The lawyer didn't even
Buy another lawyer.
Buy another lawyer. He didn't even know how old it was. No, this is Anya's. And it was one of our paralegals here, who's also in the Maritime Division. And she's a big fan of Willet and brought it to be nice. And so we have it in here. So I appreciate it because the last time this was offered to me was at 9 o'clock in the morning around Christmas when the firm was going out to celebrate. And I was, as you can imagine, I was like yes, but also it's like I still have toothpaste in my mouth. I'm really in the coffee part of my day, not in the 118 proof whiskey part of my day, right? I like to compartmentalize.
Fair.
This is for, it's after 5. This is
it is after 5.
We talked until it's after 5. This is an after 5 drink. Coffee is, what we do until this happens. But I'm glad that you adamantly were saying, well, I don't want to drink scotch. So I said, fine, go grab the Willet, because actually it is really good.
It is very good, and I frankly think it'd be rude not to drink it. She's brought it and offered it.
And also, so it is June 19th, 2024, if you're watching this. This has been here for 6 months. It's fair game. It's aged. So thanks for coming. Hey, if you like this show, if you want to know more, if you want to see Jacques more, let me know. Subscribe, put in the comments. If you don't want to see Jacques, you can email me, justin@chopin.com. If you have any questions you want to know the answer to, just put them in the comments or email me. So thanks for stopping by. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining me today on Above the Legal Limit. If you enjoyed the show and you want to hear more about business and law, hit that subscribe button. If you didn't like the show, keep it to yourself. Remember, there's no limit to what we can achieve. We will see you next week. Until then, even though we're above the legal limit, let's drive safely. Cheers, everyone.